Welcome to the Stellar Vault. Say hi in the comments to awaken the archive. Then like, subscribe, and let the tale begin.
Activate the shields. Now. The order cracked through the command center of the dreadnought Solaris, cold and immediate. Marshal Robert Gray didn't wait for confirmation. His fingers activated the wristband in his left arm, dispatching an encrypted message to a black site orbital known only as Safari. Last civilians have jumped to FTL, commencing firing mode. No restraint. Captain Sebastian Crown moved without a word. Years fighting side by side with Gray had carved a battlefield shorthand between them. One glance was all it took. Shields surged to life, just as the first enemy blast slammed into the Solaris, scattering its outer hull with molten arcs of energy. Below them, Delphus Ridge, the human colony burned. Above, the sky was crawling with them. Acronis, hive-minded, insectoid, unrelenting. 1,000 ships under the will of Queen Lathor, a creature once revered, now twisted into something obsessive. Her hatred of humanity wasn't born. It was implanted, stitched into her mind by the lies of a stepmother who had whispered madness into royal ears. Gray knew this wasn't her war, but mercy meant nothing if it left you dead. The Solaris turned, a slow, controlled pivot, and loosed 5 plasma lances. Each one found a target. Each one shattered it. In the span of seconds, the hive paused, confused, stunned. Humans had hit back. Hard. Those seconds were enough. The colony had escaped. The civilians were safe. Now it was their turn. The Solaris dove into hyperspace, engines tearing open the void behind them. The planet was gone, but the people weren't. They'd rebuild. Somewhere. But as the stars collapsed into streaks and vanished, Marshal Gray didn't yet know what waited beyond Lathor's madness. Something worse was coming, and it wasn't coming to conquer. It was coming to erase. Finally, the stars stopped moving. Solaris dropped out of hyperspace into the shadow of a dead moon, engines cooling, hull still bleeding off residual heat from the Acronis engagement. The command center was quiet, but not calm. It was the silence of seasoned professionals running post-contact drills with machine precision. "Jump complete. Holding orbit," Captain Crown said, eyes scanning the holomap. Gray stood unmoving at the center of the CIC, his hands behind his back, the dark light of the system casting deep lines across his face. "Damage?" he asked. 3 outer hull breaches, forward shielding drained to 12%. Reactor stable. "No critical systems offline," Crown replied. "Casualties?" 3 injured, all contained. No fatalities. Gray gave a short nod. "Evac confirmation." Crown turned to the comms pit. Cross-checked with Safari's black net relay. All civilian transports made the jump. No pursuit tags detected. They're clear. Gray let a breath slip out. Not relief, just confirmation. "Reroute power to stealth arrays. I want this ship dark. No signals, no pings. We disappear." The crew moved instantly. Crown stepped closer. "They stopped when we hit them," he said, voice low, as if pulling a thread loose. Gray didn't look at him. 5 shots, 5 kills. The hive hesitated. "Doesn't match their profile. Acronis don't pause. They swarm," insisted Crown. "They do when they bleed." He turned finally, eyes sharp. But that wasn't fear. That was confusion. A soft chime echoed from signals. "Marshal," called an officer. "We captured partial telemetry during their last transmission. It's layered. There's a bleed in the frequency we haven't seen before." "Define bleed," Gray said. "Primary structure's Acronis. Same resonance code as their hive links. But there's something else folded inside it. A second signal, running parallel, almost hidden in phase." Gray frowned. Hidden how? It's not random interference. Looks deliberate. Command-grade encryption. But it's piggybacking their broadcast instead of replacing it. Scrub it, Gray ordered. Full spectral slice. I want every harmonic mapped. Report in 20. Aye, sir. Gray stared out the viewport for a long moment, past the debris, past the system's dead light. Crown broke the silence. Was she there, sir? Lathor herself, 1 month before the attack to the human colony. The wedding of silk and steel. The hive world of Vrathakul pulsed beneath a violet sky, its spires humming with resonance as millions of Acronis drones synchronized in preparation for the royal ceremony. From orbit, the capital continent resembled a web spun from living obsidian, a city grown, not built, its towers laced with bioluminescent threads and chitin-formed bridges. Deep within the royal sanctum, in a chamber carved from the petrified husk of a colossal ancestral queen, Lathor Skullmoon stood motionless beneath cascading veils of pheromone-infused silk. Her attendants were dismissed in silence after layering her with ceremonial grafts. Thin, iridescent plates pressed against her skin, each one encoded with memory strands from the royal lineage. Her breathing was steady, her posture regal. But her thoughts drifted. Today, she would become Queen of the Acronis. She would do so not through conquest nor succession, but through marriage, a tactical bond to Vataril, the most respected military strategist of the Southern Hives. Their union would trigger a legal bypass of the regency and remove the Queen Mother from power. The throne would return to the bloodline, and with it, the chance to purge the rot that had festered in the Hive's core. But it wasn't just strategy. Lathor loved him. She hadn't expected to. Their initial bonding ceremony, a formal engagement ritual required by Acronis law, had been mechanical, even tense. Vatarel had been direct, impassive. Yet over time, she'd seen something rare in him: restraint, depth, a mind not dulled by hive obedience, but sharpened by discipline. He challenged her, then listened when she answered. And when he looked at her, it wasn't as a future queen, but as a warrior equal. He had called her Skullmoon once, during a private moment, tracing the curve of her jaw with 2 fingers. The moon watches everything. Even when the sun forgets, it exists. She'd laughed then, a sound she hadn't made since her father collapsed into stasis. Her father, the Hive Father, still floated in biosuspension above the central throne chamber, comatose, unresponsive. That had been the Queen Mother's opening. Young, charismatic, dangerous. She had wrapped the council in silk words and rose toxin, assuming the title of Queen Mother as though it were her birthright. But it was all scaffolding. Hollow. Today, Lathor would take it all back. She stood before the viewing panel now, watching the spires pulse with synchronized light, preparing to receive the dignitaries of the inner colonies. Soon, the marriage would begin. Soon, she would walk into the hall of joining, and the Queen Mother would be forced to witness. A soft chime echoed in the chamber, her personal holopad dimming to black as she tapped it closed. A subtle scent reached her: ozone and myrrh. The door slid open. Vatarel entered. She turned, adjusting the veil over her shoulder. No words. He approached and slowly unfastened his helmet, revealing dark eyes, reflective and sharp. They stood inches apart, antennae brushing. A brief, private link formed through ancient instinct. "Still time to run," he said, voice quiet. "Only if you carry me." "I would," he replied. A long silence passed. His fingers touched hers, just once. No ritual, no rank, just presence. "After today," he said, "we finish what they started. You wear the crown." I wear the scars." "Together," she said. He nodded once, then turned to go. "I'll meet you at the altar." And then he was gone. In the Hall of Joining, thousands watched from the upper balconies, military castes, noble consorts, and bioengineered priest drones suspended in grav chambers. The entire hive was in ceremonial sync, its atmosphere tuned to the resonance of unity. From beyond the hive, a handful of selected species had been invited. Witnesses, not participants, their presence a signal of rare inclusion. Lather walked alone down the central path, silk veils flowing behind her like mist. At the far end stood Vaterel, tall and still, armored in ceremonial plates marked with the sigil of the southern spires. High above, in the observation balcony, the Queen Mother sat on a raised throne, her expression serene, her eyes watching everything. The priest intoned the binding phrase, each word calibrated to activate the psychic link between Lathor and Vaterel. Their foreheads touched. The link opened. The bond formed. And then, a flash, a high-pitched crack, the kind only felt, not heard. Vaterel jerked as a narrow lance of plasma punched clean through his thorax. A second later, the report echoed through the chamber, and everything stopped. His body collapsed into Lather's arms, convulsing once before going still. The bond shattered, not faded, not severed, shattered. Lathor's scream never reached her throat. It exploded across the hive mind like a shockwave. Drones in the balconies clutched their heads. The priest convulsed midair, his neural network overwhelmed in a flash of searing light. Half the guards collapsed. She held him, twitching, his blood already evaporating against the floor. His final thought brushed against hers, a broken fragment of warmth and regret. And then he was gone. The blood had not even cooled when the priest, half melted, half recovered, resumed the ritual. Vaterel's body was lifted, carried away by the honor guard. His armor cracked and blackened, his limbs limp, the silent sound of a sovereign's death. Lather remained kneeling. The silk of her wedding veil still clung to his plasma-scorched chest. Two attendants stepped forward, bowing low, hands shaking as they reached for her. "My queen, the vows must be completed." Not a suggestion. A command etched into ritual. The hive law demanded it. Once the bond was begun, it must be closed, with or without the mate. Lather rose slowly. Her movements were fluid, precise, but mechanical. She stepped to the center of the hall. The Queen Mother stood high above, still veiled in shadow. The final phrases of the rite were spoken by the remaining priest caste. Each word was like a hammer against Lathor's ribs. She did not react. A single drone emerged, hovering toward her with the crown of symbiosis, a living headdress of coiled metal and neural tendrils. Once placed, it would graft to her skull and mark her as sovereign. She did not flinch when it took hold. It fused with a hiss, a pulse, a final breath of ancient power. Queen Lathor of the Acronis was crowned. The chamber exploded into formal bowing and resonance hymns, the sounds of duty, not joy. But she didn't blink. She didn't look at the throne. She didn't acknowledge the Queen Mother. She simply stared at the space where Vaterel had fallen. And for a heartbeat, nothing moved in her. No grief, no fire. Only the echo of something broken, rattling around inside a body that refused to fall. She turned, her first walk as queen. Not proud, not regal. Hollow. Later, Queen Lathor wouldn't remember how she left the ceremonial chamber. The next memory is cold light, a sterile hum, medical stasis, biosedation, her limbs restrained, her mind spiraling. The bond had been real. The love, undeniable. And now, all she felt was void. Queen Mother appeared beside her, dressed in soft black silk, antennae coiled in mourning posture. "He was brave," the Queen Mother whispered. "We traced the shot to a cloaked vessel in low orbit. Cloaking failed for a heartbeat after the ignition burst. We couldn't capture them, but the signal residue was Terran." She paused. "A human killed him. Before you could rise. Before the Hive could unite. They fear that. They always have." Lathor tried to speak, but the sedatives held her tongue. "They exposed the traitors," the Queen Mother continued, "collapsed the Gortar market, trying to blame us for the crimes the traitors committed. And when that didn't break us, they broke you." She pressed a cool hand to Lathor's forehead. "You were to be the queen they couldn't manipulate, so they made you a widow before you could become one. And the thing was, it fit. The timing, the tech, the motive, and the grief, too great to resist, too vast to process." In the chrysalis chamber, Lathor emerged days later, skin healed, posture unbroken, but something inside her no longer aligned. She walked alone into the throne chamber. The Queen Mother waited, expectant. But Lathor said nothing. She simply ascended the throne, her expression cold, her voice silent. A drone approached to speak, but stopped. Something in her eyes silenced him. No rage, no screams, only ice. Outside, the Hive spires shifted to black resonance, a rare signal broadcast across the colonies. The Queen was awake, her consort was dead, and war was coming. Tular of Marine, high-born aristocrat and blooded warrior of the Gruer species, stood silent in the upper tier of the Hall of Joining, a silhouette of stillness wrapped in shadow and status. He wore ceremonial armor, obsidian carapace plating over matte gray scale cloth, cut with crimson silk bands etched in Old Tongue, each symbol of victory, each thread woven from the battle shrouds of fallen foes. Across his chest lay the triple braid of Maran nobility, signifying both royal blood and sanctioned violence. His body was statuesque, reptilian frame nearly 8 feet tall, shoulders broad, posture unshakable. His eyes, vertical slitted and sulfur gold, scanned the room, not with curiosity, but with calculation. Around him, the air vibrated with resonance and ritual. Drones floated in silent formation. Pheromone veils drifted like mist across the Hive Cathedral. The Acronis moved as one, in reverence, in tradition. Dular moved for no one. He had come not to celebrate, but to observe. Because Lathor Skullmoon had earned his respect, rare for her kind, and Robert Gray had asked him to attend, with eyes open and senses sharp. It was not in his species' nature to enjoy courtship or ceremony, but it was very much in their nature to detect betrayal. And so Dular stood, arms crossed, motionless, watching as Queen Mother presided like a spider watching her web quiver, just barely too far from reach. He had been in enough war rooms and poison courts to know when a blade was about to drop. He tasted blood in the air long before the plasma shot was fired. When the plasma hit Vaterel's chest and the Hive screamed as one, Dular was already moving. His cloak dropped behind him as he vaulted the balcony rail. While others collapsed or panicked, he was descending, his claws digging into chitinous walls as he dropped stories in seconds. "Lock the exits," he barked into his comm band. "Seal the outer vent arrays. Kill anything that moves without my authorization." His elite unit, 6 mercenaries drawn from a dozen systems, trained to hunt in low-oxygen kill zones, obeyed instantly. They fanned out across the ceremonial Hive structure, but even they weren't fast enough. By the time they reached the sniper's perch, The plasma rifle was still warm, but the shooter was gone. A pod had launched from the inner chamber, undetected, unregistered, coated in Gortar dust to scatter Acronis sensors. A ghost escape. Dular ignored the guards. He stepped into the room and inhaled. Slow, deep, through both nostrils and the scent slit beneath his jaw. The chamber dimmed around him. From his breath, something formed. Not tech, not illusion. A memory drawn from the air. Faint golden strands rippled across the space, coiling into heat lines and scent echoes. A figure emerged, tall, lean, cloaked in dark flight weave. Not Acronis, not human. Traitor. Male. Right-handed. Slim body, heavy lungs, exhaled slowly after the kill. Coward's kill. Dular opened his eyes. The projection collapsed, scent trails evaporating into stillness. He did not leave Rathakul immediately. He stayed for the burial. When Lathor finished her vows, empty-eyed, silent, crowned in front of a dead lover, Dular stood at the back of the hall of joining and said nothing. His species did not kneel, but he did not turn his back. Only when the final resonance tones faded did he turn. His cloak rippled behind him like a scaled shadow as he left the hall and the world behind. His informants answered quickly. It took only 2 days to burn through his contacts, Black Channel couriers, ex-trader smugglers, and one old flesh carver who remembered every face she'd ever modified. The target had a name. Doug Thule, trader. Contractor, known for freelance wet work. Once turned down a Federation job because the timing interfered with his personal blood rituals. Dular memorized his bio, logged the payment chain, and jumped to the Solaris without announcing his arrival. Because this didn't need a message. This needed witnessing. Inside the CIC, silence reigned. Gray didn't look up when Dular entered. Crown did, with a sharp nod of respect, but Gray kept his gaze on the star map, watching for movements that hadn't happened yet. The killer was a traitor, Dular said. No greeting, just truth. Gray's eyes didn't move. Name, he asked. Dular tossed the data shard onto the table. A red hollow bloomed, Doug Thule's face forming in perfect detail. He wasn't fast, Dular said, just prepared. Pod was waiting. Ship cloaked in the shadow of the spire. Gortar dust hid the heat signature. Means someone with reach, Crown muttered. And resources, Gray added. Traitor-level gear, assassin-level preparation. False flag op. Dular narrowed his gaze. They meant for Lathor to see a human's weapon. They wanted her broken, not dead. Broken. Gray finally turned from the map. She was already under pressure. That shot didn't just kill a consort. It lit the match. Dular handed over a final chip, encrypted. This is Thule's last known route. I want him alive. So do I, Gray said. There's more, Dular said, voice lower now. Payment for the hit came through a layered set of shell accounts. 11 hops through neutral systems. Look at the source. Crown pulled up the transaction history. His eyes narrowed. Mining contracts. Deep core ops. Not just mining, Gray corrected. Gortar. The holo displayed the mineral symbol. Unstable, shifting, glowing faintly blue. Still the most dangerous resource in the known systems, Dular said. State shift reactive. As a solid, it makes plasma weapons burned 10 times hotter. Liquid form. Best starship shield additive ever discovered. Gaseous? Heals things we haven't named yet. Hard to mine, Crown added. Toxic. Expensive. Not if you use slaves, Dular finished. The room went still. The traders have been extracting it for over a century. Quietly. Dirty. That expose your research fleet published last cycle? It didn't just cost them credits. It cost Queen Mother an empire. Gray looked down at the holo of Doug Thole again. Not just a killer, a cleanup job. After Duller departure, Gray walked to the side console, brought up a new file. Colony data. Crown flinched slightly. Delphus Ridge, the closest human colony to Vrathakul, just far enough to not matter in peacetime, close enough to burn in a war. You think that this will be their target? Crown said quietly. I don't need to guess, Gray replied. I've seen what grief does to leaders. And Lathor is in pain. And now? Crown asked. Now she's making herself deaf, so she doesn't have to hear reason. Gray looked at the ship's hull map. 7 points of breach. 3 FTL regulators in red. Prepare the Solaris. I'm commanding the whole evacuation. Hours later, beneath the tactical command deck, Gray stood alone in a sealed comms chamber. No crew, no aides, just cold lighting and the soft hum of encrypted systems running silent. He tapped a sequence into the control pad. 10 digits. No pattern. The holographic interface shimmered to life. A figure appeared on the display. Tall, armored, expression unreadable. No name. No rank. No voice. Just a silhouette in low light, standing still on some distant outpost. Gray didn't wait for acknowledgement. We found the sniper, he said flatly. Trader gear. Hired contract. It's the matchstick. The fire's coming. He held up a case to the interface. Biometric locked. Keyed only to the receiver. We don't need him dead. We need him talking. The figure didn't move. Didn't blink. Gray exhaled, then added one last thing. Your call sign is Hercules. Get it done. The display flickered, then vanished. The planet wasn't on any map, but the tavern had a faint glow from neon script that translated only to one word in every known language. Drink. The bar clung to the side of Outpost Dresna, a smuggler's pit cut into the rock of a nameless asteroid. Laws here were thin. Deals came first, drinks came second, everything else came last. Pirates, deserters, traitors, they all ended up in this room sooner or later. The air stank of old smoke and cheap filters. Flickering hollow screens over the counter spat news feeds from half a dozen systems, though nobody trusted them. Inside, it was never quiet. Smoke curled through the rafters, tangled with laughter, and static jazz played on half-functional speakers. Card games buzzed with multilingual insults. Someone in the back was juggling knives while yelling about how he once escaped a black hole. A centaur-looking merchant arm-wrestled a six-eyed cyborg over control of a spice route. No one won. They just passed out. Behind the counter stood a massive, Shrek-like figure. Broad-shouldered, tusked, olive-skinned. Something between a war troll and a mutated bouncer. He wiped the same glass for 10 minutes while keeping perfect track of 6 side conversations. To most, he was just the bartender. But to the bunny-eared thief currently pouring spice milk shots down the bar and humming an earth folk tune, he was a whole different creature. I thought your old days were over, the bunny muttered, watching the bartender's posture change when the private comm line blinked beneath the counter. The bartender didn't answer. He just nodded, handed over the towel, and disappeared into the back room. The back room didn't match the front. Here, the walls were reinforced alloy, a biometric locker sealed behind a triple-locked vault. He stepped to the wall, touched a hidden panel. The change was instant. Green, Shrek-like skin and bulk peeled away, shifting like smoke over muscle. The wide, ogre-like jaw compressed, broad tusks retracted. The illusion cracked, and underneath emerged something colder. Tan skin, human bone structure, tight muscle bands, tusked jaw reformed into a squared chin. Shoulders reconfigured, armor auto-surfacing from beneath the disguise mesh. The creature vanished. The human face underneath the monster clicked into place. Calm, unreadable. Eyes cold, posture perfect. Screens blinked with encrypted comms. In the center, a holopad blinking blue. He tapped it. Gray's voice came through, low and clear. Target confirmed. Doug Thole. Last seen entering Solon 5 under Trader protection. You're activated. Bring him in. No vapor trails. No bodies unless you have to. Understood? He nodded once. Your call sign is Hercules. Get it done. The display flickered, then vanished. He returned to the main room, now wearing a long coat over low-profile armor. Bunny Thief looked up, startled. He dropped a glass. It shattered. I thought your old days were over, he said once more. The bunny had the annoying habit of repeating his own sentences. Hercules flipped a council badge with 2 fingers. Sleek, black, and real. They were. Then someone broke the rules. Now, I'm breaking faces. He paused at the door, turned once. Bar's yours. Don't break the good glasses. Then he was gone. Solon 5, 5 hours later. The planet was rotting. Once a mining colony, Solon Vive had been gutted by Gortar extraction runs and left to choke on its own residue. Toxic fog drifted down through the alleyways, slicking the metal streets in an iridescent film. The air tasted like radiation and old blood. Here, the traders ruled. Unofficially, of course. Outposts dressed like supply depots. Checkpoints disguised as shipping lanes. But everyone knew who pulled the strings. Hercules landed in a civilian drop pod 2 clicks outside the perimeter. By the time he walked into the city core, he no longer looked human. The disguise mesh activated, refracting his scent, mass, and appearance. Now he was a short, hunched being with oily scales and dull violet eyes. Average, unimpressive, exactly what he needed. He tracked Doug Thole by movement patterns first, not by heat, but by rhythm. Humans notice patterns where machines fail. His eyes swept crowds, calculated vectors, read tension in shoulders, spacing between bodyguards. Found him. Thole was on the upper ring of the 3rd-tier market, haggling with a grease-draped tech broker. His posture was twitchy, paranoid. No surprise. Hercules had that effect, even when unseen. He moved closer, timed the shadows, watched Thole's eyes flick, waited, slipped behind a generator stack, stun dart, fired. 1 guard down, 2 more moved. Too late. Hercules hit the first with an elbow sharp enough to break cartilage. The second dropped after a body slam that crumpled his armor like foil. Thole ran. That was a mistake. Hercules didn't run fast. He ran inevitably. The chase was brutal. Down a shaft ladder, across a plasma duct bridge, through a collapsing cargo tunnel. He tackled Thole mid-jump, slamming him against a wall so hard the Gorder piping cracked. Going somewhere, he growled. Thole reached for his belt. A last-ditch pulse mine. Hercules kicked it out of his hand and twisted his arm just enough to cause regret, not damage. You're done, Doug. CIC, Solaris. Hours later, Gray stood at the edge of the command table. Crown watched silently. The doors hissed open. Hercules entered, dragged Doug Thole by the collar like luggage, dropped him at Gray's feet. He didn't scream much. That's either impressive, or he's just a fool. Gray didn't smile, but his eyes held approval. Hercules turned to leave. Paused. Oh, and sir, you were right. He was hiding something. He tossed a cracked data pad onto the table. The screen flickered to life, showing Gortar trade contracts, encrypted logs, shell company trails, and the final signature, Queen Mother. The final confirmation from their analysis of the command-grade encryption, the signal that had piggybacked Acronis transmissions during the conflict over Delphus Ridge, had just arrived. War. Day 1. The first strike. Gray knew 5 ships wouldn't go unanswered. When Solaris cut through Lathor's outer fleet and dropped a handful of Acronis war cruisers into molten debris, it wasn't strategy. It was a message. One the Hive would take personally. One they couldn't ignore. He expected retaliation, even prepared for it. What he didn't expect was where the war would begin. Not on a human colony, not on a target of military value, but in 3 bloodless, undefended, sacred places where Earth's closest allies lived in peace. The first strike hit Vrashtu, a harvest moon of Dular's people. The Gruer. It wasn't a bombing run, it was worse. Atmospheric igniters dropped into crop fields, triggering chain reactions in the soil. Thousands of acres incinerated. Food reserves turned to ash. A whole planetary year's worth of survival, gone in 30 seconds. Dular didn't speak for 5 minutes after hearing the report. When he did, he only said, "War confirmed." The second strike came hours later. Avalon, home of the Sylphid, aerial, pacifist, ethereal. The sky turned lilac, then gray, then black. Neurotoxin gas dispersed through their high-altitude cities. Half the population, gone before they could scream. The other half, blinded, panicked, scattered. The Sylphid never made weapons. They sang. Now, their cities were silent. Then came Shakti, a world of peace, a planet of evolved warrior goddesses who renounced war 1,000 years ago. They were in spiritual dormancy, a sacred tradition. Their minds asleep, bodies defenseless. Half of them died in their sleep. Only a handful survived, the ones who'd taken night watch for ritual balance. What all 3 targets had in common? Earth. They were humanity's true allies. Gray read the reports in silence. The bridge of the Osiris was dead quiet. Every crew member watching him from the edges of their consoles, waiting for what came next. He didn't speak until the last feed ended. Then he turned to Crown and said, "Bring everything. No diplomacy. No signals. They started this with ghosts. We answer with fire." The Osiris launched from the deep-hold docks of Station Safari, an armored Leviathan, older than current war doctrine, rebuilt beyond regulation, and linked directly to Gray's neural architecture. His personal dreadnought, ancient in design, unmatched in response, and loyal only to him. The ship didn't respond to commands. It responded to him. It moved like a thought, hunted like instinct. And it remembered every war Gray ever fought. By nightfall, the Hive returned, this time to Magnolia, the heart of Earth's expansion era. A planet designed to be a utopia. Forests, oceans, wind systems crafted with genetic precision. Agriculture, defense, cultural centers, all interwoven. It was beautiful, and it was a fortress. The Acronis fleet dropped out of FTL over the northern hemisphere. 222 ships. No hails, no pause. Just weapons. Hot. Gray didn't wait. Aboard his personal dreadnought, Osiris, he drove straight through their vanguard. A burst of coordinated plasma lances punching holes in the formation, the ship weaving through attack vectors like a predator in smoke. On the flank, Captain Crown led the Solaris with ruthless precision, his group sweeping wide to catch exposed underbellies, while the Acronis shifted formation. Dular's war cruisers arrived late, but when they hit hard. Heavy rails slamming into the rear line, shattering 2 Hive destroyers in one synchronized strike. For 3 hours, the sky over Magnolia became a graveyard. 60 Hive ships destroyed, 5 heavily damaged. Osiris took a direct hit to its spinal railgun, disabled, not dead. Gray stood inside CIC, blood on his brow, voice calm. Let them retreat. They're not done yet. He was right. 2 hours later, the Hive came back. But the ships weren't the same. This time, they were coated in a new alloy. Chitin-forged Acronis hull, plating laced with shimmering black veins. Gray knew it before the sensors confirmed it. Gortar. It wasn't just a weapon now. It was a message. The Hive had merged its tech with the most powerful illegal resource in the galaxy. And someone, Queen Mother, had weaponized it at full scale. Crown stared at the feed. They're adapting. Like us. Only faster. Gray's jaw clenched. Then we slow them down. The sky over Vrathakul fractured like glass. Gray had pushed the Acronis out of the Magnolia skies and brought the war to the Acronis planet. From the surface, it looked like a silent meteor storm. Streaks of burning light ripping the atmosphere as railgun rounds arced across orbit, precise and brutal. But above, in the void, it was chaos. Kinetic lances tore holes in Hive cruisers, collapsing shield clusters with surgical rhythm. Counter bursts of plasma followed, molten green and Hive-marked, carving into human flanks. The kill ratio meant nothing now. This was attrition. Every shot was a punch, every second, a funeral. The Osiris, Gray's personal dreadnought, moved like a beast in blood. Railguns locked and fired in sequence. Talk, talk, talk. Each shot a kilometer-long tungsten slug, fired at 10 times the speed of sound, punching clean through chitinous holes like a god hammering nails. But the Hive had learned. Some of their ships didn't die on impact anymore. They adapted, reinforcing critical points with Gortar alloy skin, absorbing just enough of the blast to stay alive long enough to return fire. One slug hit Osiris's aft shield too early. A glancing impact, but it rocked the hull and knocked out secondary sensors. Gray didn't flinch. He saw through the ship like it was his own body. He bled where it bled. A carrier beside Crown Solaris took a direct plasma breach to the core. No time for evacuation. It lit up like a second sun and vanished from the feed. 143 souls incinerated in under 2 seconds. We're not winning, Crown said from Solaris's bridge, voice tight. We're not losing either, Gray replied, locking a target and letting Osiris take the shot. We're bleeding them. Then came the fracture. Osiris's port-side corridor, Deck 3, where auxiliary targeting fed its secondary batteries, took a stealth plasma dart from a Hive sniper pod. Gray's link jolted. Pain. Real. Searing. A flicker of white-hot fire flashed through his chest. He collapsed against the CIC railing, grunting as his left arm detached at the elbow, cauterized mid-flesh. The neural feedback nearly knocked him cold. "Marshal down," one of the tacticians yelled, moving to assist. Gray waved him off with his remaining hand. "Keep firing. I've got another one." Then the 6th day arrived, and burned itself into history. But it would be remembered not for losses. It would be remembered for what happened next. In the final hour of the battle, when the Hive's fleet retreated once more, this time not out of strategy but out of fear, another ship slipped unnoticed into the battlefield's underbelly. A ghost, a smuggler's profile, disguised transponder, cloaked engine signature. It wasn't a warship. It was Hercules, Lathor's flagship, chamber of sovereignty, orbited behind Vrathakul's moons, far from the front. Security was layered. Patterns were randomized. No one could get close, unless they were already inside. Hercules moved like a myth. Voice changed, skin shifted, mannerisms mapped to hive subcastes. Even the ship's scent was correct. He'd studied for days, waited for the moment when the hive's entire command structure would be looking the wrong way. At the battlefield. Inside the Chamber of Sovereignty, the corridors breathed, living metal pulsing with biocurrent. Guard drones passed him without pause. He didn't run. He didn't sneak. He walked like he belonged. The armor he wore mimicked high-caste symbiont guardians, and the Queen's own retinal code, stolen days earlier, pulsed behind his false eyes. Lathor was where Intel said she'd be. Not on the throne, not in a war room, alone, sedated, hooked to a hive-link chair, replaying tactical memories that weren't hers. Loops of pain. War, broken worlds, commands issued by voices not her own. Hercules stepped into the room, and the door sealed behind him. The Queen opened her eyes. "You don't belong here," she said, groggy. "Neither do you," Hercules replied. She blinked. "Who are you?" He dropped the disguise. Green skin faded. Synthetic pheromone fields dissolved. A human stood before her. Tan. Broad-shouldered. Calm. "You can call me Hercules. Or bartender. Doesn't matter now." "You came to kill me?" "No. I came to bring you back." He didn't give her time to scream. A hypo spike slipped from his wrist, and the vial inside carried the result of decades of human desperation. A Gortar-based synthetic alloy. Not mined, not stolen, engineered. Coded to target the same neural pathways that the hive's psychic manipulation had corrupted, and burn them clean. "Sleep, Your Majesty," he said. "You've been lied to long enough." Her eyes closed before she could reply. When she woke, it wasn't in a hive chamber. It wasn't in a prison. She was in a glass-white recovery room. No restraints, no guards. Just one man at her side. He stood silent, armored from chest to boots, and where his left arm should have been, a cybernetic limb of matte black alloy, pulsing faintly with Gortar light. Her eyes widened. "You lost an arm," Gray nodded once. "And you almost lost yourself." She looked down at herself. Still whole, but something felt gone. "Why didn't you kill me?" "Because you tried to warn me, before the madness, before the crown. And you weren't the one who started it. Then who did?" He didn't speak. Instead, he placed a holopad on the tray beside her. It played the last message she sent, before the wedding. "When I wear the crown, I will bring Earth into the light myself." Her hand trembled. "I said that?" "You meant it. I don't remember him. Vatarel." "We had to erase the grief," Gray said, "or the healing wouldn't work." "I want to remember," she whispered. "You will," he said, standing. "And you. Will you forgive me?" He looked down at the arm, then at her. "Forgiveness isn't my job," he said. "But peace might be." That night, high above Safari's orbit, a single line was entered into military record. Day 6. War ends. The throne chamber of Rathakul had not been opened since the war ended. Its great chitin doors, once pulsing with resonance, stood still, inert, as if the hive itself had gone silent out of shame. But today, they opened. Not for war, not for ceremony, for justice. Queen Lathor entered first. She walked unguarded, without heralds or fanfare. Her once glorious regalia was absent. She wore only the thin mantle of her lineage, and the neural band fused to her skull, a reminder of what she had been and what she had survived. At her right side, Marshal Robert Gray, arm folded behind his back, the other mechanical and humming faintly under the soft blue lights of the chamber. His face unreadable. This was not his fight, but he would witness its end. Duller of Mharan stood at her left side, eyes scanning the room for any unexpected event. The Queen Mother was brought in last. She didn't walk. She was suspended, her limbs bound by null field clamps, her head held high by pride that even defeat couldn't break. Her face bore no scars, but her eyes were daggers. "You look tired," she said to Lathor. "I expected more from the Queen who had to be rescued like a child." Lathor said nothing. She ascended the steps of the central platform, not to sit on the throne, but to face the room. The silence in the chamber was total. Hive drones, ministers, and nobles watched, but made no sound. This was her trial, her reckoning. "Queen Mother, you manipulated a people bound in trust," Lathor said, voice calm but firm. "You fed my grief. You sharpened it into a weapon, and when it was ready, you aimed it at the galaxy." The Queen Mother's smile didn't falter. "And they called me dangerous." "You enslaved innocents in the Gortar mines," Lathor continued. "You poisoned Avalon's skies. You ordered the massacre of the Shakti during their sacred sleep. You murdered Vatarel." "No," the Queen Mother said softly. "I broke you." The rest was just cleanup. A low hum stirred in the chamber, the hive reacting, emotionally, instinctively. Lathor raised her hand. Silence returned. "By Acronis law," she declared, "I cannot sentence you to death." "That would be mercy." "Then you plan to cage me?" "No," Lathor said. She stepped forward, her hand extended, placing 2 fingers gently on the Queen Mother's brow, a gesture once reserved for initiation into the hive's sacred chorus. "I sever you," Lathor said, "from the voice, from the memory, from the hive." The Queen Mother's eyes widened, not fear, but something colder, disbelief. "You wouldn't dare." But it was already done. The neural link disconnected. The hive song, that constant thrum of shared thought, the rhythm of billions, vanished from her mind like a candle snuffed in a vacuum. Her limbs began to shake. She tried to speak, but the words didn't come, not just because of silence, but because she no longer remembered what it meant to have an audience that listened. Gray looked at her and saw it. The beginning of the starvation, the soul screaming for something to echo back. But there would be no echo. The Queen Mother was taken from the chamber, still upright, still silent, but her eyes were wild now, already searching for a voice that wasn't there. She would live, but not for long. Later. Sky platform. The sun over Vrthakal set in gold. Its light cast long shadows across the city, now rebuilding. The towers scorched by war, but still pulsing. Gray stood on the sky platform, overlooking the city that had nearly become the cradle of extinction. Lathor stepped beside him. "Do you think they'll ever forgive me?" "No," Gray said, not unkindly. "But they'll remember who put the blade down." She nodded, quiet. "I remembered something," she said. "A name. Just before I entered the Hall of Joining, he called me Skullmoon." "Did it hurt?" "Yes," she said. "But not all pain destroys. Some of it teaches." She turned to him, and her eyes dropped to the cybernetic arm. "I'm sorry," she said. "So am I." They stood in silence for a while, and then Gray handed her a datapad, unmarked. She opened it. A message from Earth. A vote. Earth was to be offered a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. Not a favor, not a token. An equal. "Took a war," she said. "It's not the first time," he replied. We said no then. We'll say no now. Lather tilted her head. Why refuse power? We act when we must. We don't wait for permission. And the cost? She insisted. Ours to carry, he said. Besides, madness starts wars. Bureaucracy prolongs them. But freedom is what ends them.